Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Living Astrology with Janet. It's time to grab your cup of coffee or your tea. Take a moment to sit back and relax while we chat about what is ahead for this crazy week. And I'm telling you, it's already been crazy. I mean, actually, yesterday began crazy in my life, but in a good way, not necessarily a bad way yesterday. But then this morning wasn't so pleasant. As you can see, I'm in flannel because our heater took a dive and somehow isn't working. It's working now, uh, but barely. And when I got up this morning, it was 56 degrees in my house. Now, that's not horrendously cold, but it's 27 outside. So if I get up and I turn the heat on, but the heat never came on. So we discovered after some work that first of all, we are very low on propane, which we didn't know because they're supposed to just keep us filled up. And second, that the batteries died in the thermostat. So the thermostat wasn't working. These are all sort of Uranus events, right? That can happen, especially now. This week Uranus is changing direction, moving from retrograde into direct. But at this point, of course, he's just hanging at this, last degree before he turns. So the unexpected is due to happen. And yesterday, well, I got to go back about a week or so, maybe 2 weeks. My youngest daughter reached out and said, "Hey, I'm going to attend the Matt Fraser event coming up this next." I think it was yesterday, so the 26th. And Matt Fraser is a psychic medium, and he's very popular. We've actually gone to see him in person and actually met him in the elevator. My daughters did, I didn't. And then, uh, we've attended these different events since Brian died, and waiting because he's a medium, he can bring in people who've passed over. But none of us have ever gotten chosen. People all around us have gotten chosen, but we haven't gotten chosen. Well, I told Jennifer that I didn't necessarily want to go to that session, and Heather, I think, had something else to do, so she couldn't go. But guess what happened? Not only did Jennifer get chosen, but she was the first one, and it was our son, Brian, her brother, Brian, and a grandparent whom we're not sure who it was actually. It could have been a grandparent-like person that came through with messages for her. It had us all crying as she called us, afterwards to tell us what had happened. And I was kicking myself because this is the one time I didn't feel like I needed to go. But maybe that's why it happened, right? Because um, Jennifer was the one, and maybe she was the most open of the three of us. I don't know. Any way you look at it, it was a shock. It was a surprise, but it was also kind of a good feeling, right? Every time something like this happens, it validates to me that there's so much more than we know, with our limited focus here on the physical world that we're in, and that indeed our loved ones, even though, we're sad because they're not here in the physical, that they're still so much with us, and that, they're accessible, right? And we are open. When we are open, they become even more accessible to us. So funny thing, right? 2 days in a row of some crazy things going on. Consequently, I was sitting here getting ready to go on air, and I was just thinking about how was I gonna open the show this morning, and then this thing pops up that says that Boston had just had a 3.8 earthquake. I mean, like, Boston doesn't have earthquakes that I'm aware of, so it's another one of those shocking things. Having grown up in earthquake country, 3.8 isn't a huge deal, but if you're not used to an earthquake and that happens, it could be very, unnerving, right, for people. So it is one of those days, a fit entry of this particular week. So let me say a quick good morning to people showing up, and then we'll dive in because I do have quite a bit to share with you. Good morning, Julie. It's good to have you with us. And Diana says, good morning. And today is peaceful in her world after a snow filled last week. Indeed, that she is in New Orleans and that whole South area. You guys were getting hit with snow. And Tom says, grande rising Astro Design family. Good morning, Gayla. Good morning, Pam. Good morning, Christine. Tom said, you said, guess what happened? You didn't give us a chance to guess. Christine, good morning. She says, glad your family received messages. Good morning, Teddy. Good morning, Joan Durkee. Yeah, thank you, Christine. You know, messages, right? And it was an interesting message that he had. He was very much aware of Amanda, who would have been his wife shortly, and who is the mother of Wyatt, my grandson, their son. And she needed to hear the message, right? So it's really positive that it came through then. Amy D, good morning. Hope you get it all working. I have a question. Tried an email. Did you record the Energy Almanac session you did on the 16th? I didn't do it, Amy. I didn't do it because um, I've been writing for the Energy Almanac for 2026 and 2027, and I have more responsibilities for the writing this year because I'm a part owner of it now. And I just couldn't get the time. And now that I'm almost done with the bulk of the writing, well, the bulk of the writing is done at this point in time, but now we have to decide what other articles need to go into the almanac. Then I will plan to do that. And what I was going to do wasn't so much about the Energy Almanac. Well, it was about how to use the calendar in the almanac. And because we are looking at another broadcast on Wednesday talking about February, and we'll have a new calendar to look at. It might be better to do that this week. And it'll be a free thing, and it will be recorded and put out for everybody. So thank you for bringing that up. Good morning, Tamara. Good to have you with us. And let's get started, shall we? So on Friday, I sort of rolled out to all of you what it was that would be happening in the main for this particular week. Today, we're going to dive in a little deeper to each of the things that will be occurring at least up until Friday's date when the nodes will shift on Friday. We won't talk about that today so much, but today, Mercury is making a move out of the sign of Capricorn and into the sign of Aquarius, joining Pluto immediately as he does so, right? Pluto is still only at like 1 degree 55 minutes, I think, or so of the sign of Aquarius. So Mercury moving much faster than Pluto will definitely, bump right into him. And this week, he is not only bumping into him in terms of a conjunction, but they're also sharing the same gate in human design. And we talked a lot about that. So I don't necessarily need to dive in any further with that. But it is interesting to note that, the Pluto is that sign right now that is the great transformer. He always is, but he's the great transformer and is the source of a lot of the crazy things that are going on in the world in terms of breaking down old systems and getting us prepared for a more progressive, humane future. And all of that looks really wonky right now with things the way that they are, at least here in the US, how things are shaping up. And, how do we get humane out of what is happening here? I don't know, but that's what Pluto does, right? Pluto moves through in the beginning of a new sign, breaks down anything, makes us look at what is exactly not what the highest of that sign is. So if the highest of Aquarius is humane, humanity, right? Compassion and humanity, and the ability to be progressive in the way that we look at our world, then what better way than to put somebody in office here in the US who is showing us anything but those things, right? And it is a fascinating view because the same thing happened when he first moved into Capricorn, and we witnessed the worst, the ugliest of Capricorn energy, the destruction of main government, of mortgages, of banks, of things that we thought were too big to fail, and then they did. So it's been interesting to watch, what Pluto does in each one of these signs. And it gives us the opportunity then to heal those things and to redesign the society in the way of moving on an evolutionary path forward. Even if at first it feels like we're going backwards, right? Which it kind of does. It looks like we're, going backwards somewhat. So Mercury as the messenger moving into the sign of Aquarius and right into the arms of Pluto is significant. I mean, I can't underscore the significance of this as it's going on. There could be new messages, new revelations that are being delivered to the collective. You as an individual, but also us as a collective. And it can have profound implications on the transformation that we're going through or will be going through, continuing to go through, and how it manifests in our world. So last week we talked about these specifically. If anybody has any questions about that, let me know, and I can address it this morning. But I just remember that the collective message with Mercury and Pluto in the gate that the gate 60 and then in the gate 41. Let's look at 60 first. It it is about resolving limitations. It is about, facing the limitations that we have. For example, let's just look at one, the limitation of energy on the planet, right? And whether we have even addressed it, right? We could say, oh, yeah, we're moving away from oil toward batteries. Well, batteries have an adverse effect on the climate, on the environment, almost as bad as the oil does. And then if we move to wind power, well, wind power, same thing. When all along staring us right in the face is this fact that we have free energy, that we just have not had the will or the will, right? Because people, the bigger people want to make money, right? So they saw dollar signs in electricity. They saw dollar signs in oil. They saw dollar signs in the lithium batteries, the tearing up of the earth for her resources. It equated to dollars, made mega billionaires out there of some people, and so there isn't a will to go to something that is free, that is clean, so we, as the people, are the ones that have to take that in and decide what is it that we want to do, right? We are more than just those billionaires that own these powerful oil, natural gas companies, coal, all of that. And I'm not saying that these are bad things, right? I'm saying that there's been a very obvious alternative all along since back in the late 1800s, and it's been relegated to the closet because there's no way to make money on it. You can't make money on something that's free. So here we go. We're revolving around looking at these limitations that we have. Oil isn't going to last forever. Lithium is probably not going to last forever. And there's already a bad fire in Monterey, California, in a lithium battery factory, right? So we already know this is not a good thing. Um, anyway, on and on. I could get off my soapbox now, but the idea is that the systems and the things that we've been using aren't the best. They're not the best for the climate. They're not the best for the environment. They're not the best for us as humans. So, what would be an alternative? And we have to find the will to look in that direction, right? That's the deal. And Mercury coming along, kind of depositing these messages for us so that we will look at these alternatives. Now, when Mercury gets a little further into the sign of Aquarius, and then Pluto just following on his heels will go into the gate of imagination, and I'm going to break that down a little bit more in a little bit later in the broadcast today. So, if we look at this, there's this focus on transformation this week, especially with all the changes that are happening, and yet there's reason for optimism. There's reason for hope as well. This isn't all doom and gloom and bleakness, although it feels that way sometimes when you're just, in the midst of it. But yeah, solar, Christine, awesome, right? There's we have the technology, we have the knowledge, right? So we have the Mercury and we have the Mercury, we have the Uranus parts of it too, the technological. We got to have the heart, the will to say, okay, we're not, we don't need to keep feeding you billionaire oil magnates money because it's not good for all of us. And that's the thing. What's the biggest thing that's best for the most number of people? That is finally the ending message of Pluto moving through the sign of Aquarius. And it's progression, right? That it is all about progression. And as Pluto will sit at the gate 41 for a while, and we'll talk about that in a minute, there's a lot of imagination available, right? There's a lot of being able to seed into the future and to seed the future, right? Not just see it, but seed it if we only had the will to do so. All right. Now, one of the other big things happening this week is Jupiter making a move. Remember, Jupiter's in Gemini, a sign of communication, of technology in some ways, in the how do we work the technology, of information, of ideas, of travel, right? The things like trains and planes and buses and automobiles, those are really kind of in the realm of Mercury, at least the transit, the transportation part of it is. And so Jupiter has been bringing us new innovations in that area. Also, big problems, right, in how we move items across the country. So there's a shift going on with Jupiter and Gemini around education, around transportation, around information, whether true information or not true information. So it's a big deal. But right now, Jupiter is getting ready to move into a different gate in your human design. So I'm going to actually share my screen here, presentation mode, share screen. And it's a tab. There we go. All right. So what y'all should be seeing is the human design body graph. And I've put in Pluto's position here. Pluto and Mercury will be at gate 41 later in the week. But 16 is up here on the throat center. And okay, be one color, the gate. There we go. So here's the 16. And 16 is called the gate of zest in quantum human design, but it was also called the gate of enthusiasm and skills in traditional human design. So it's taken on this, it's the voice of enthusiasm, right? Any gate on the throat center is the voice of something. And the 16 is the voice of enthusiasm. And it's all about expression. It's all about mastery and the energy to bring ideas to life. And with Jupiter, an amplifier sitting here, then you can see that this theme will be amplified over the next period of time. So here's what we need to know about this, right? The key themes of the gate. But before I say that, remember that in your own human design chart, which I hope you guys have with you this morning, in your own human design chart, take a look at the gate 16. Is this part colored in or is this part white? Right? If it's white, then this has been an open gate in your chart and not an energy that you were expressing or broadcasting. But now, with a planet sitting here, everybody is going to be broadcasting Jupiter through the gate of enthusiasm, right? You might even notice in your voice, I'm noticing it this morning for some reason, a more enthusiastic voice and how you relate things to people being more enthusiastic. And if you're someone who has this part colored in, or maybe it's colored in all the way down to the gate 48, take a look at what planet energy is sitting there by birth. And then now add Jupiter to that. So let's say you had Mars sitting here. So you were already, expressing sort of this, very active voice through your gate of enthusiasm or gate of zest. And now you add Jupiter there and it's magnifying that, amplifying that. So for some people, this will be an amplified version of the energy you normally express. And for some of us who don't have this normally, this will also amplify the gate, but in a sort of new way, a different way than what you're used to. So I hope that makes sense. And again, I'll check back in a minute for questions if you have questions about how that plays out. So, one of the key themes here is that this is the gate for learning, or the enthusiasm, if you will, for learning and developing skills, right? It's not just about having ideas, but actually putting in the effort in to bring them to life, to bring them out into the world. So now with Jupiter sitting here, there's a boost in optimism and motivation to dive into new skills and refine your talents, and or try something creative, try something that you've not tried before. Now the gate is located on the throat center, so it's about communicating your passion and the excitement as you express your passion that inspires others, right? Or excites others. So with Jupiter sitting here at the 16, big, bold ideas are ready to be shared. Your big, bold ideas are ready to be shared. And people, you might feel compelled to express them, and maybe more dynamically than you usually would, or to speak up to others about what excites you, right? That might be something new for some of you or something more amplified for others. There's confidence and courage here because the throat center, it can be a very deep place of vulnerability, right? Because your words are a reflection of you, right? Or your inner calling or your soul. And if you are, doubting yourself in any way, then this gives you the opportunity to have the courage and the confidence to speak out, right? To share yourself. This is kind of an I can do this energy. So it encourages us stepping out of the doubt and into the joy of creating and sharing. So I take your fear and put it on the shelf, right? Just get out there and fall into this expansive push that Jupiter has here of you trusting in your abilities and then sharing of yourself with others. Now, there is always a shadow in the gates as well. And so we need to address the shadow of the gate 16. And the shadow here is about having scattered enthusiasm. Remember, this is Gemini energy, and Gemini is a mind or logic centric sign. So that means that there's a lot of thought, a lot of energy rolling through the mind. And with this level of enthusiasm, do you jump into too many things? Right? Or do you put too many irons in the fire and now you can't stay positive and uplifted about them because there's just too many? Like, where do I spend my time? So maybe there's a fear of failure, that your ideas won't come to anything. So it leads to being apathetic, right? Not doing anything, right? So be mindful of balancing the excitement that you feel for new possibilities or for new expressions of who you are, and marry that with a practical approach to these things so that you don't overextend yourself or to spread yourself too thin or get so scattered that the cause is lost, right? You forget, what is it that I was trying to do anyway? So Gemini, of course, adds curiosity and adaptability here, and the intellectual energy to the transit in general. So the combination brings this hunger for new knowledge, but also new experiences, and then encourages us to communicate, to network, and to explore all of the multiple ideas, but just being careful not to get too many of them going at one time. So Jupiter moving into the gate 16 here is pretty freaking awesome, I think. It's a wave of excitement that rolls through the collective. And literally, I didn't look up the dates, but hold the phone for 1 second here. Let me take a look at how long we have that energy. Jupiter is in the gate 16 until next month, February 11th, on the 12th. Is that right? Yep, that's not Jupiter. There's Jupiter. Yeah, that's right. February 11th. So you have about 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks of this excitement. Do what you want with it, but make it something that is important for you. Take the, increased excitement and focus it somewhere. That's important. Sharing your ideas, engaging in meaningful conversations, things like that. We might in the collective world see innovations coming up in education or media or technology that might inspire us to express ourselves even more fully. Individually, you'll also feel this enthusiasm and collectively enthusiasm as well. So it's sort of the sense of joy and flow that is coming from something that you're truly passionate about, right? So find what that is and put your energy toward that. So embrace your zest for life. Dive into building the skills that you need in order to bring your passion out to the world, and be confident, right? Confident. You're the only one that knows how much you know or how much you don't know, not the rest of us. So, don't feel like you have to know more. The Achilles heel is the 48, which is opposite of the 16. This here, the 48, because it feels inadequate. It's a fear. It's on the spleen, and the spleen center here, if it's connected up with the 48, can make us feel like we need to know more. We need to read another book. We need another certification. We need another training, that type of thing. And that will cause that enthusiasm to get all bunched up here and not ever get really put out into the world. Now, on the same day, literally within an hour of each other, Saturn will move into the gate 22. And the gate 22 is over here on the emotional center. Hold on, I got to go back and track and make sure that you guys are seeing the changes. Very good. Okay. Just making sure you guys see the changes. So when Saturn transits into the gate 22, it creates this balance, hopefully, between expansive Jupiter, right? Jupiter and Saturn are opposites of each other, right? Jupiter is expansion and growth and amplification, while Saturn is constriction, limitation, conservativeness, and sort of staying within boundaries. So we have this energy of the exuberance that Jupiter's bringing, and now Saturn bringing this emotional grace, poise, and the ability to navigate life's ups and downs to the table. And with Saturn here, there might be profound lessons for all of us about emotional alignment and finding grace in the challenges that come up around emotional things, right? The emotional alignment here. In the gate 22, it you know, emotional grace and charm. So, let's break that down for a minute. What does that really mean? And the 22 as the gate of grace is all about recognizing when the timing is right from the emotional center to share yourself with others, sharing ideas or sharing your creative energies and so forth. So there is a presence in this gate. 22 exudes sort of charm and grace, but it's moody. So there's charm and grace, or there's not, right? That's the gate 22. So with Saturn here, it would really be about mastering the emotional balance and learning to how to remain poised during times of turbulence or times of transitions or times of emotional dramas and traumas, right? The ups and downs. So, how do we do that? Well, the first thing that always comes to my mind is the gate is about surrendering and accepting whatever it is that you are feeling, not making yourself wrong or making another person wrong, but also not blurping out onto everyone emotional reactive energy. So being able to respond instead of react. So grace comes through our being able to surrender and go with the flow of life, knowing that emotions are just a part of the human experience. And the there are going to be many triggers to emotions during this period of time. Saturn tends to do that, right? To bring things up to the surface. So there may be lessons in letting go of resistance to your what you're feeling, or maybe learning to trust the emotional process even when it feels uncomfortable, going with that flow. And in the shadow of the 22 is disharmony or resistance to feeling emotional energy. It can manifest in our lives as emotional turbulence. And that's even more so later this week when the nodal axis shifts into the gate of turbulence or the gate of crisis and the gate of impact or the gate of love or war. And there's difficulty in finding peace amidst this chaos. And it's up to you to find it, right? It's not going to come to you from some magical being outside of you. It's going to come from the magical being within you, inside of you, that holds the emotions, whatever it is you're feeling, lightly, knowing that emotional energy is turbulent at times and peaceful at others, right? Recognizing the ups and the downs, and encourages each one of us to emotional growth and maturity. All of this is so interesting happening in the lead up to the emotional solar plexus evolution or evolutionary leap coming in 2027. And that's literally 2 years from now, right? So, of course, all the practice now that we use, the better off we are when it comes down that we actually have to rein in emotional reactivity. Now, Saturn's role in the gate 22, because it's just an interesting place for Saturn to be, um, brings a disciplined approach for us to manage our emotions. And it encourages each one of us to take responsibility for our own feelings, for how we react or how we respond to external circumstances, and how we find stability in the ebb and the flow of emotional energy, because emotional energy is water. It flows. It flows. And there are also lessons here in vulnerability, right? It's hard for us sometimes to feel vulnerable, but Saturn doesn't let us bypass the hard work. So there may be lessons in vulnerability, in authenticity, in claiming your authority, in standing up for what's right, for your values, and how we remain open hearted. How do we remain open hearted while staying grounded, right? We need both. So, Saturn at 22 gives us an opportunity to refine our emotional expression. How do we cultivate emotional integrity and practice grace in relationships, especially in moments of tension? And there's bound to be tension. I mean, that's part of how it's the tension that causes us to grow. It's the tension that causes evolution, right? That causes us to move forward. Now, collectively, themes of emotional resilience, of grace under pressure, finding harmony in chaos, all of those things will be highlighted collectively across the board. And collective shifts might include taking responsibility for the emotional impact that we have on one another and fostering greater empathy and authenticity in our relationships. I feel like empathy is probably the key word here. How do we foster that collectively? And individually, of course, you may feel called to work on emotional balance in your life and address the areas that you've resisted surrender or held on to the tension of what you're feeling instead of just letting it go. So relationships then might be the place where the opportunities for growth come from, and teaching us lessons in patience and in forgiveness and emotional alignment. So it's a big deal to have Saturn here. And a sense of inner grace, grace, the name of the game or the name of the gate, emerges when you accept life's emotional flow, even during the challenging times. All right. So with Jupiter in 16 and Saturn in 22, we're balancing enthusiasm with emotional depth. Essentially, that's the whole key here, right? And we are being encouraged to take action and express those things that are our passions, but Saturn's grace energy reminds us to stay emotionally aligned and grounded. And together, they create a powerful dynamic of inspired momentum tempered by emotional maturity. Right. So emotional maturity, harmonizing opposites is another way we could look at this. Jupiter expansive qualities, Saturn more constrictive qualities. In a dual universe such as what we live in, how do we balance those two things? Right. So The takeaway message is that true grace comes from emotional alignment and accepting life's flow. And even in the face of the challenges that are present in your personal life or in the lives of people around you, or even in the greater world. So, good times, right? I'm going to stop sharing and see how people are doing out there. Any questions? So guessing that would help Pisces Sun 11th house gate 22.2 having Saturn there. Yeah, it would certainly help in the grounding of it. I think I think the more time that you've spent on the planet, m- the more this energy will land in a way that's beneficial, right? That is very evolutionary, a raising of your consciousness, let's say. I think the younger that you are, the more difficult this is because you're still in the process of learning, and life can be very turbulent for the younger generation as they're learning lessons and so forth. It's not that us as older people don't have lessons, it's that we've been there, done that in some respects, right? So it might be easier for us. It might just crystallize more easily. I don't think the challenge is less, but it crystallizes there more quickly. So yeah, in a way, lots of ease perhaps because you've experienced this before. And for younger people, this might be the first time they're experiencing a planet, a heavy planet such as Saturn, at a gate like this, right? Really impressing upon us all the duty we have to stay emotionally aligned and to be emotionally responsive and not reactive. That's a lot, right? J Lo, I have 22.1 in my culture. And at Christine, whoop, we are in for some molding. I love it. Jeannie Vibe says, "Be nice if being old has a benefit." I didn't mean it as in being old. I meant more like more mature, maybe more experienced, right? We've been, if this isn't our first rodeo of this kind of thing, about 29 and a half years ago, Saturn would have been at this gate. So if you are at least, let's say in your 50s, you experienced this as you were getting, ready. You're really jumping into adulthood, right? So, all right. So, Corey, hi. It's good to see you there. Any other questions? Go ahead and put those down there because now I want to move to the new moon. Because not only do we have these changes going on with Saturn and Jupiter and Mercury moving into Aquarius, we have a new moon in the midst of all of this, and it is a hyped up new moon. So I'm going to share my screen. I think I've not done this before, sharing the actual, is it a window? An entire screen? Nope, window. Hmm. Is it a tab? Oh, maybe it is. There it is. Hmm. All right. So let me look back and make sure you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. In a minute, hopefully you're going to see it bigger. Okay. So I'm going to stop share and reshare. How's that? Because I'm not sure that you guys are seeing it the way I'm seeing it. Present, share screen. I really thought it was a window. Uh-uh. Okay. Okay. Now it should be bigger. So this is the chart of the new moon in Aquarius. And I mean, the eye is immediately drawn, and I've skinnied this chart down. I've taken out most of the extra things that I usually put in there so that you would see the force of the planets and their placement in just mostly two parts of the chart, in Aquarius and in Pisces. So here's the new moon, and a new moon is when the sun and the moon come into a conjunction, and they will be at 9 degrees 51 minutes of Aquarius. Next to the sun and moon combination is Mercury and Pluto, still very tight in their conjunction, or getting to the point where it's just intense. And then, as well, over here in Pisces, we have Saturn, Venus, Neptune, and the North Node all within, about 11 degrees of one another. Now, that doesn't mean that that's a conjunction, say, of Saturn and the North Node, but this is what we call a stellium. And stelliums are powerful because it puts a lot of energy in one place. And, we have Chiron in Aries, Uranus in Taurus, Jupiter in Gemini, and Mars over here retrograde in Cancer. So there are some planets that are spread out, but this becomes the hot zone in your astrology chart right now. So switch to your astrology chart, find Aquarius, find Pisces, and the houses that they are occupying in your chart is where your hot zone is. And it's hot not only because right now we have a new moon and we have all these planets piled up, but these are where the eclipses are going to be right here in Pisces as we get into March. Pisces and its opposite sign Virgo. So I could highlight this one too. So if we look at this new moon, there's a powerful blend of forward thinking Aquarian energy, transformation a la Pluto, and emotional depth a la these planets over here in Pisces. And so this new moon is loaded, right? This is loaded with energy, setting the stage for revolutionary ideas and innovative action, perhaps, profound shifts in how we connect with one another and how we envision our futures. And the breakdown of each of these is kind of deep, right? Because we have so much encased here in this new moon. And by the way, this new moon is the 29th, so on Wednesday at 9.51 of Aquarius, so almost 10 degrees of Aquarius, and it happens at 7:36 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So about 4 something for those of us further in the west on the West Coast. So the new moon in Aquarius, let's just deal with the core themes of that first, and then we'll add all of the other things as the spices on the table, so to speak. So the first thing we have is visionary new beginnings. So Aquarius, the sign of innovation, of collective ideals, of breaking free from old paradigms, is setting up our time for intentions for the future. So this is coming on the heels of a calendar new moon in January, calendar, right? Gregorian, not necessarily anything spiritual, just mechanical, and a human design new year, which implements a time of visioning and of imagination, and setting intentions now with the new moon for your own personal growth, for your own envisioning of the world that you want to create. And it's an ideal time for thinking about community, technology, humanitarian efforts, but also to stepping into your own personal genius, whatever that is for you. And that tracks along with Jupiter in the gate 16, doesn't it? Because that was all about finding your passion and speaking into it, bringing it alive. So the new moon is also setting us up for that same thing. Now we're also, set up for revolutionary change. We can't help but have this going on with Pluto conjunct this new moon. The themes then of transformation and empowerment and breaking down outdated structures are kind of front and center. And this new moon encourages us then to go into sort of deep reflection about all of this change and invites us to shed what no longer is serving us, but also allowing us to make space for something more aligned and something more visionary as time goes on, right? And collectively, the stellium in Aquarius amplifies the need for us to be in connection with one another. It amplifies innovation and it amplifies forward thinking conversations. And it's a time for us to focus on progress, both personal and collective. But notice how that feels in contrast to what we see going on in the governments of the world, around the world, not just in the US, but around the world. So interesting. It's just interesting, right? Now, the closest aspect of the new moon is going to be to Venus in Pisces, and this would be uh, a semi-square, excuse me, a semi-square, not a I was thinking semi-sextile, but it's actually a semi-square because it's 45 degrees from the moon and sun at 9 degrees 51 minutes here, and meet Venus at 25-26 minutes here. And this brings a subtle tension to this moon and its emotional complexity, right? Venus is in Pisces. She's exalted in Pisces. So she's enjoying these emotions, the emotional interplay. And that brings a bit of emotional detachment to the new moon as well. Or maybe it's the new moon bringing some emotional detachment to Venus in Pisces, because Aquarian energy is a little more emotionally detached. So while we may be longing for some kind of connection or the beauty of connection, it might feel at odds with the broader vision we have. And this is the subtle tension of a semi square. So the advice then is to find a balance between dreaming big, but also staying emotionally grounded, right? Bringing things to life is a little more difficult during this period of time. All right. So trine of to from Jupiter in Gemini. So Gemini Jupiter is at 11 degrees 20 minutes. So there's really only about a what is that? That's a sextile or a trine, but only like a degree and a half difference between where they sit. So that's pretty darn close in terms of the energy between them. So a trine brings supportiveness, right? It brings ease and it brings optimism, right? Jupiter's in Gemini's optimism, curiosity, and ability to expand vision comes to the new moon, right? And the new moon's ability to be innovative and see the future comes to Jupiter and Gemini. So they come together. But they come together in a way that's great for brainstorming, for sharing ideas, for collaborating with others, but know that there might also be the need for us to actually step up and embrace that collaborating energy. It doesn't come just like, without you stepping up and doing something about it. Now, we also have a conjunction. There's only 7 and something degrees difference between Pluto and the new moon, right? So it's there. We can give up to 15 degrees of orb with Pluto to any other planet because that's how powerful Pluto is. So we have a conjunction of Pluto to the new moon, and Pluto here is a deep transformative energy, an influence, right? And it adds intensity to the new moon, pushing us to become empowered, not to lose sight of your power, your personal power, our collective power, and then pushing us for profound shifts in our mindset or also in collective structures, the collective mind, if you will. So it is a time for us to let go of outdated beliefs. There's definitely that, or any fears that have been holding us back, right? The fear personally, but also collectively. So focus on finding or creating a future that's rooted in authenticity and power. Do not let go of your power. And the fact that this is also a new moon conjunct Mercury, even though not exact, Mercury here just in if it was Mercury and just the new moon, then I might say, well, they're not really in a conjunction. They're kind of a wide conjunction. But the force of all of these coming together, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Pluto, means I'm calling this a conjunction. And Mercury can add some mental clarity here and maybe some innovative ideas to the new moon. So it's a time for you to think boldly, to have visionary conversations with others, and plan for your future and apply this in a way that works for you, maybe through journaling, maybe through meditation, maybe through brainstorming with a friend, somebody who will just listen and hold space for you while you talk to them and communicate your intentions for the long term, right? For the goals that you have in the long term that will change your life and help maybe to elevate in others' lives, right? That's what this is about. So, additional things to note that Mercury is also conjunct Pluto during the new moon, which we've already kind of talked about. So, there's deep transformative conversations possible, insights that are possible. And this aspect really highlights truth telling. uncovering hidden dynamics and the power of ideas to spark profound change. So it's kind of exciting, but also expect that maybe some things will be revealed to you that you never knew were there before. And that happened to me. Saturn is also conjunct Venus right over here. Here's Saturn, and this is Venus. They are again, typically maybe not in a tight conjunction, but the force of Saturn, Venus, Neptune, and the North Node all together in Pisces makes me say, okay, Saturn is conjunct Venus in Pisces. And that means emotional grounding and responsibility being yours, right? In relationships and being able to be your authentic self, feel your feelings, be vulnerable or risk being vulnerable without being reactive in your emotions. So evaluate your emotional commitments. Your finances, even Venus rules finances, your creative projects, Venus rules creativity, and view them with sort of this practical lens, right? Being able to see the connections and see how they all fit together. Now, Venus is also conjunct the Neptune placement here, just 2 degrees away from one another, a conjunction by any definition. And they're also conjunct the North Node that, just recently moved into the sign of Pisces. So we have also this dreamy energy, the spiritual combination of Venus in a sign that she's exalted in, coming into a relationship, a conjunction, a blending of energies with Neptune, who is the ruler of Pisces. And then the North Node coming here, teaching us lessons. You can even see these little tick marks, how close they are together. That tells you how tight, all of this energy is coming up. And the conjunction with the North Node emphasizes destiny and alignment with your higher path, taking the spiritual higher road. And one thing I could say here is let your intuition guide you with this new moon, guide you into what to do in your relationships, how to, navigate your relationships, your creativity and life direction, because destiny is life direction, right? Stay open to divine inspiration and, trust the flow. And Neptune conjunct the North Node. Neptune's the ruler here. And this is heightened spiritual awareness. And of course, intuition that guides the collective, but also us as individuals toward unity, toward compassion, toward creativity, encouraging us to trust in the unseen and the flow, trust in the flow of life, right? All that's so very fascinating, don't you think? Especially because there's not a lot of looking out into the world right now. Do you see a lot of unity? Do you see a lot of compassion? Um, mm, right? This is something that we are being asked to really stand up for in both our personal lives, but in our collective lives. Now, also pay attention to your dreams, pay attention to signs, pay attention to subtle insights that you have, because this might be a call from your higher self or your soul self for a vision for yourself and for the world and your part in it. So we have transformative visioning in this new moon. We have to balance emotions and intellect. We want to embrace collective growth and not going backwards, right? Back to old mean days, right? We want to make sure we're moving into a gentler, kinder, more generous humanity, right? So focus on how your unique gifts can serve that. And serving through the Venus Neptune North Node conjunction offers us a chance to align with our soul's purpose and grounding your soul's purpose with love into the physical reality and living by your higher ideals. All right. Now, we also have in the last 6 minutes here, I can go through to Uranus moving direct. Y- Uranus is a planet. He's right here, right? You see the little R next to him. So he's retrograde. And he has been moving through the same house in your chart for nigh on 8 years, 7 years right now. So there should have been a lot of liberation going on in that house that Taurus is in and the house that Uranus is moving through in your life. So if this were a person, there's been a lot of maybe untying from ancestral beliefs or ancestral stuff, right? Untying you, untethering you, as it were. So, whatever house in your personal chart that Uranus has been in is where, you're suddenly, maybe because he's getting closer to the end of this transit, seeing the impact of where you have been too tied up or too caught up, not free, and where you've likely been in a process of freeing yourself, liberating yourself, awakening in some way. So, whatever house that is, and the reason that you want to look at this is because you probably already know it, right? Inside, you probably already are like, yeah, I've had this host of changes going on in the relationship with money. Well, maybe your Taurus is on the second house, or maybe it's on the eighth house. And so your relationship with money and finances and resources in general and self worth and worthiness and values has been being um, undertaken in a new freedom sort of way. So that's why it's important to have your chart, know your chart, right? So you know where this is all happening. Now, when Uranus moves direct, the energy of awakening and liberation and unexpected change starts to move outward and not inward, right? So it manifests as more tangibly in your physical world. So that is another reason why you want to pay attention, because you're going to be seeing a shift happening in how you experience the energy of liberation and awakening. Now, Uranus's core themes in Taurus are about stability, right? The idea of representing a stability in your resources, in your values, and the material world. And Uranus is the planet of disruption, innovation, and challenges the status quo. And Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, right? Where the new moon is and where we have a plethora of energy right now. So the status quo is changing. And as Uranus moves direct, he starts to make that forward move. Any internal reflection and reevaluation around your relationship to Taurus things, money, possessions, stability, self worth, self esteem, confidence, begins to really manifest outwardly. So, if you've been someone that has been really working through issues around self worth and being worthy of receiving and of realigning your values, now you'll begin to see that manifesting in your outer world. And all along, he's been about liberating stuck energy, right? Taurus is an earth sign, and it is its hallmark is stability and security, right? Stability meaning I'm not necessarily going to make changes in my life, because unless it's, really important that I do, there has to be a lot of energy to make me move off where I am. So Uranus, though, doesn't play by the rules. He's a nonconformist. He is unconventional in the way that things happen. So, direct motion, the movement from retrograde to direct motion, can bring sudden opportunities for change or sudden changes. You don't necessarily, maybe want those changes, but they come, and it pushes you out of your comfort zone. So expect this week also, with Uranus changing direction, to somehow impact you by maybe, receiving some sudden insight that shifts how you view yourself in the context of Taurus things like resources and values, personal security, maybe finding a newfound sense of freedom where you felt constrained before, particularly around money and relationships and possessions. Now it opens up. Breakthrough maybe in creativity or in innovation, maybe expressing more of your own unique identity. So lots of positive things, but expect on the collective level this to bring disruption. There might be advancements. I was noticing this morning that because I like crypto, and I was an early investor in cryptocurrencies, but I noticed that over time, Bitcoin went way high, like to 100,000. It was 109,000, I think, at one point, and now it's going back down again. There's some instability happening in the cryptocurrency market. It's not just Bitcoin; it's all the cryptos. So I expect that maybe Uranus has something to do with that here, right? Maybe we've seen the highest that, say, Bitcoin could go for the time being, or maybe it's about to bust out and up, or maybe it's about to crash, right? Unexpectedness, right? So watch what's going on out there in money. Watch the economy, right? There could be some upsetting news in the economy. I saw something about eggs and rising in price because of bird flu and all of that kind of thing, which means that all of you that expected, prices to go down after in a Trump presidency may be totally disappointed because there are other pressures coming to bear that are unexpected, right? We don't see them coming. So reflect on where you feel stuck and where do you want to be more free? What values do you hold? And are you aligned with them, or are you living like this? Like, my values are over here, but I'm moving in this direction, right? Because I can tell you from doing soul and Akashic records work that ends up in another lifetime as a pattern, right? When you're not living according to your values, your stated values, then it causes an issue that goes on into the next lifetime. Change your fear, right? Look at your fears around letting yourself be free. And it's a great time for a checkup around those very things. I'm out of time. Sorry about that. There's so much more that I could be talking about. But for now, I need to go. I think I do want to pull at least one card for us. Somebody give me an idea of a card that you might want. Dragons, wisdom, soul coaching, angel. What else is on type here? Oh, here, let's do guides of the hidden realms, right? Let's do that one. We haven't done this one in a bit. I think that is on the inside of the box. Here it says, accept the sacred partnership of the guides and awaken to more than you ever thought possible. Your true path, your purpose, your power, and your potential. I think that sums up basically this week's energies. All right, so I'm drawing a card. Ooh, that one. Okay, so, upside down. A way out of the weeds. A clear way out, multitasking, getting organized. It's kind of an interesting looking card, all green. A way out of the weeds. Card number 37, which is a 10, which is a new beginning, right? 10 is an amped up one. And by the way, I also wrote the numerology for the almanac this year, or for the next year, for 2026 into 2027. That was interesting because when I was 18 years old, that was the first spiritual discipline I learned. And I didn't even realize how that would impact my life at that time. I was 18. I walked through a bookstore, saw them, and went, oh, I need you. And bought both of those books. They were Matthew Goodman, Matthew Goodwin, I think, books on numerology. So here we go. A way out of the weeds. Key concepts is an end to struggle, getting organized, letting go of overwhelm and distractions, a clear way out. Stuck in the mud, confusion, lost, the negative effects of multitasking. I see a lot of the themes that we just talked about. Some days you feel stuck, or no, some days you feel confused and stuck, like you're in a marsh, lost in the weeds. There's no way out in sight, and you can't break free of this predicament. Struggling and pushing, however, will get you nowhere. You must do the opposite of what you want to do. Relax instead. Can you remember your partnership with Spirit and ask for divine help? Pray for clarity and the weeds to part. If you could stand up and see from a higher perspective, would you notice things you're missing while struggling down here in the weeds? The big picture is where you need to place your attention now. Don't let yourself get trapped in the mud and the weeds of other people's drama and gossip either. Spirit knows the way out. If you trust the path, it will be shown to you. Keep your head high, then take one step at a time. So very cool. I'm also going to read it in reversed because I'm not sure now if it came out upright or upside down right. Don't get so caught up in the minutia of life that you lose sight of the bigger picture. Overwhelmed by too much information and all the things that need doing. So Jupiter and Gemini, right? You end up spinning out and not doing much well. We're taught that multitasking is a great skill, but often it creates more problems than the ones we're trying to solve. Today is the end of your struggle. You're going to choose only one thing to focus on right now before moving on to the next task or goal. It's a good idea to organize your responsibilities by importance and urgency. What can be done later or perhaps not at all? Don't forget to ask for Spirit's help. In the end, everything will have to be magically done in perfect order and timing. This is also an invitation for you to take a temporary media diet. Stay off social media completely for at least a day or two, except to watch my show. Watch or read only high level news to stay informed if you must. In this way, you unplug from the frenetic energy that is exacerbating the overwhelm. You will return to your center when you allow yourself to quiet down, right? So, a way out of the weeds, right? Booyah. All right. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. That is it for me today. Don't forget, I will be on air on Wednesday this week with Tam to take a look at February. And of course, the big news in February is Mars leaving retrograde. Woo! I don't know what that's going to mean because it's going to be a while before he gets juice up going forward, but it'll be fun to take a look at that. And that is it for me. Take care. See you then. Bye.